Okay, everyone, welcome to our first weekly call in our Farms Together state LFPA Ask. We are convening these calls weekly because this is really a marathon. We know we've been sending a lot of emails out, asking for things and asking for actions and phone calls, which makes it seem like a really quick, fast-moving effort, which it is, but it's also an effort that's going to span the next few months. And so we want to make sure we are a bit more organized in our communications about the background, about what's going on, as well as making sure we're organized and clarifying in what our asks are week to week, because it is not just a 1 week phone call, phone banking effort. It is a multi-month effort, which will have different components involved, different action needed, and different supports. So I'm going to start with the just high level overview, and then move into organizing tactics. As you all know, I mean, the biggest picture is that there's a funding cliff. Many of you all have already fallen off that cliff, and everyone will for LFPA by the end of May. Um, and we are doing everything we can, both statewide and nationally, to try to preserve the funding. So towards that end, ourselves and CAF are leading a statewide ask for $45 million for 2 to 3 years to continue the LFPA program, while we also work nationally to preserve the funding. What that looks like in terms of how the government works, I'm newer to this, but essentially every January, the governor will propose a budget. That will then go, then there'll be a counter offer of a budget from the Senate and the Assembly. Then the two will meet in the middle, and California will have its next year's state budget. Um, This one important piece of information is another deficit year. I don't know how many that makes in a row, but I don't know the number of $1 billion of a deficit we're in, but that is one factor that is relevant to this moment in time, and our efforts here. 18 billion is the most recent deficit amount. It's a lot. But also that means our $45 million is just a drop in the bucket. Um, so there's generally two ways that money gets into the California's budget. One is a bill that's pushed through the Senate and the Assembly and then goes to the governor's office either for a veto or passing, which allocates money. Through the Congress and state Congresses appropriations, right? The other way is what we are pursuing, which is just a straight budget ask, asking it to be put into the general allotment for the year. A good example of what like a um, distinguishing examples is that we're putting out a budget ask, whereas the market match program is putting it in as a bill. I'm like newer to this. We don't getting a lot of support from CAF. I believe bills are more stable. What we're asking for is a one-time infusion of funds, hoping that there'll be a long-term commitment. What market match program is hoping for is a system of ongoing funding, which would benefit from having a more stable bill language, and permanent funding. Um, the governor's budget this year did not include any money for LFPA. It was just not registered, which means our whole effort right now is to convince and lobby and advocate our state Senate and our state Assembly to put this budget ask into their proposal that then goes back to the governor and they reconcile them into a final budget, which means our whole need is to push our local legislators towards putting that 45 million into the agriculture budget. We're work in, primer on California. There's a state senate and a state assembly. They work similar to the federal versions, where our senators have a larger number of districts, or sorry, a fewer number of districts, and then our assemblies are more micro districts. Um, there's a lot of nuance here in the avenue in which we approach this budget ask. And it starts, and we put this in an email, but it starts with securing a legislative champion. Without a legislative champion, we don't have anyone whose office can make the ask and push that $45 million into the budget. You need basically one person or two allied groups to say, this is important to us, we're running on it, we're going to lobby all of our fellow assembly people. And when we write our package, our bill package, we're going to have this written in. Um, it's really crucial to both have a champion as well as have a champion who is well situated politically um, to pool the resources and pool the allyship to have their um, budget ask fulfilled. You know, as you can imagine, if someone is putting their efforts out there to put a budget ask, they want it to pass. And so our need is to find that person. Um, a little background is right now our policy effort is being led by CAF, Jamie, the policy director, with Fresh Approach acting as support, and then California Association of Food Banks are lending their support as well. Um, and Jamie's efforts in January was to work behind the scenes through the relationships she and CAF have to secure that champion ahead of time, to already have that person in place committed to this budget ask well ahead of sort of all of the legislative mechanisms that I'll go into later. Unfortunately, in that time period, we didn't find anyone. Um, a lot, largely because it's a deficit year, and also because of the demands on our state budget to make up and backfill all of the cuts as a result of the federal government. And so, I don't even remember when, a few weeks ago, at the end of January, that's when the emails started pouring in from us, is because the order of operations in this action is to identify champion and then to lobby. Our hope was to find a champion first and then bring everyone in on the larger advocacy efforts. A couple weeks ago, because we didn't have a champion, we essentially were reaching out to you all because we need to raise pressure at a district level to ask for a champion. That resulted in many of y'all making phone calls, many of your farmers making phone calls. We did a full lobby day where we had 5 food hubs and ourselves and CAF go up to Sacramento and go. I think we had meetings with 20 to 25 offices. And after that, we did more phone calls, got more press, did everything we could to just make the ask of individual assemblies, people, and senators to champion this bill. And as of now, we still do not have a champion, despite all of those amazing efforts, which means we still need to apply pressure. Um, each office, and this is where Jamie would be able to give this tutorial much better than me, or the School of Rock, not School of Rock, Schoolhouse Rocks Bill would be able to do this better than I. But I believe every assembly and every senator, and I'm not sure how many there are collectively, 100, uh, they put into a group pod essentially their budget priorities. And right now, every office is doing that essentially. They're listening to their district, ideally, and putting in based on based on the input they're receiving from their constituents, what their priorities in their office are, and then they spill that out, and will work within their committees to secure whatever funding they want into the budget package. Where we've heard um, from Jamie is that in the next couple weeks, all of those offices will be finalizing. So our hope, even though we haven't had a champion show up as of yet, is that in this time period where um, folks are finalizing their budget asks, this takes priority. Um, Over the last month, we have put together, and Jamie has largely, and Paul at CAF, a short list of preferred champions in the Senate and the Assembly. Something to know is that we need a champion to be a Democrat. Um, and then secondly, we need them to be strongly situated politically. And so that can look like different things. It can be that they sit on the relevant committee, the Agriculture Committee. It could be that they're a chair of that committee. It could be that they're part of Appropriations Committee. It could be that they're a speaker and essentially have strong collective relationships. Um, and it could also be and should also be districts that are uh, significantly impacted by the results of Farms Together. Um, it does not matter whether the champion is a senator or an assembly person. Um, Mia, would you actually mind putting in the most recent list of champions into the chat? I can name some off the top of my head. But
Yes, if I can find it. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop there for questions before moving into mobilization. And welcome folks who joined. Just so you know, I am recording this and I'm gonna share it out after. Any questions on the Delia?
Yeah, Andy, thank you. Did you say that the list of possible champions have any of them already expressed interest? Have they all expressed interest, or is it just those other factors that would prioritize them?
Yeah, so you know, everyone's very political, which means uh, non-committing. I will say from all of the conversations we've had behind the scenes and in offices and on the phone calls, everyone is very supportive of this um, project, and yet no one has stepped up to be that champion. And I personally am not sure why someone would or would not. I assume it's because there's other priorities that might not have anything to do with food, and there's a limited budget. It's like if there was a budget surplus, sure, it would have been no problem to ask, but everyone knows that there is a deficit. And what we've also heard is there's a lot of downward pressure from the Senate and Assembly leadership to not stuff a budget um, because of the deficit. So I think it's mostly that everyone is really cognizant of the deficit and have a huge list of priorities outside of food. Any other questions? Um, but I will say what we've done over the last couple of weeks, which we hadn't planned to at this stage, but we did great education. From all the phone calls, from our visits, we were able to really share the importance of this. And we do know that as soon as a champion is around, a lot of folks have basically said, once it's there, we will support it. Um, a couple other, I think, or one other sort of relevant note about how things work is that every office is sort of an assemblage of people that are relevant. It's not just the assembly person and it's not just the senator. They have uh, they have staff. They have a chief of staff who's often the most important person, and then they have a team of staff. And then within their teams, there's people who have the portfolio that's relevant here, whether it's hunger or food. Um, and so that'll be relevant in a second. Um, okay, so that brings us to what needs to happen now, which is essentially phone calls. And that's really it. What we've learned over this last year is that phone calls, especially from constituents and stakeholders in district, is what matters. Um, yeah, we can share out the list, Delia, of who we visited. It's really raising the voice of constituents to the level of the assembly person or the senator in their staff office. It's not emails. No one, they don't really get read. It's phone calls sort of over and over again, and that's exhausting. But as of now, that's what's needed. And our hope in this weekly call, and for the folks here, are to work with you all to one, make, share that the phone call ask right now is not just a one-time thing. It's a routine scheduled thing. And our hope is to not overwhelm everyone, but begin working with you all to set a cadence and a schedule for yourselves and your farms to make phone calls. And what we have succeeded in the last couple weeks is we've made enough phone calls and met with enough of offices that we don't need to lay it on thick. We don't need a dozen calls at a time to the assembly people or to the staff offices because that might annoy them, to be honest, because they already know about the program. They've already heard about the ask. They know we're looking for a champion. They know about the impacts. However, we still need to show up periodically um, to make that phone call. And that means a cadence. We're setting a target cadence goal of 2 to 3 phone calls, not for collectively per district, like every 2 days. So, like, Cecilia, who's and Yay Organics, who's on the call. Your assembly person is Cortezi. They already know about the project, but we just need to remind them at a pace of every 2 days. So, like, what would be ideal is that if Yei and you identified 2 farms and yourselves or 3 farms, and then you set a calendar like a Monday. I'm gonna call Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm gonna use the script that Fresh Approach put together, and I'm gonna have my 1 farm call on Friday, and I'm gonna have my like I'm gonna use the first person for EA Organics right now. IA Organics, I'm gonna call on Monday, Cortese's office, and I'm at the same time I'm gonna ask um, one of my farms to call Monday as well, and then we've made 2 calls. And then on Wednesday, IA Organics will call again, and I'll ask another farm, and they'll call in using the script. And then on Friday, same thing. IA Organics will call. I'll have another farm call, and you'll use the same script. And in that way, we're trying to make it not overwhelming um, for everyone, and to you can go back to the same farms to call routinely if they're down with it. Um, and what our hope to do, and this is sort of a new space, is to help put together strategies, whether it's calendar invites, whether it's phone banking hours, to help you all stay consistent. Because truthfully, like we do need you all to keep making phone calls. It sounds simple and annoying, but it's what matters. And one other sort of piece that we need for our efforts is to when you make phone calls and when your farms make phone calls, we need you to report back to us that you made a phone call on Monday. Your farm made a phone call on Wednesday. Because then what we do is we go to the offices, or Jamie does and CAF does and our lobbyists do. They then go to Cortez's office and say, we know you heard from this farm on Wednesday, or we know you've gotten like 10 calls this week. That's the program we're talking about. Um, we do have one. I think Samia is working on a new template. Um,
Yes. Yeah, the current plan, which is like a plan in process, so maybe altered, is that you guys are able to send information about who you've called to myself or Andy, and then Andy and I will track that. Right now, that's possibly the simplest, just so that we have one person editing this document, but we may share it widely with you guys.
um, Yeah, so we're also trying to have this weekly call to pull that information from you all as well. And we're also, again, not trying to overwhelm everyone. So we're gonna simplify our communications out to the group just to twice a week on Mondays with a what's in store for the week, and Fridays with what any recap, and then hold this meeting on Tuesdays for office hours, for questions, for any updates. Any questions? Um,
Are you going to be like assigning people to do the calls so they don't like, or do we self-select? I'm still not clear on whether we just jump in and do it. Like, for
Everyone
instance,
should just do
I'm in.
it. Everyone should just do it with the claim that we're not asking for so many calls. If everyone is committing to their network to just 1 to 3 calls every other day, then it's okay that the same district is getting more phone calls because it's not an overwhelming amount. So, for example, um, do we have any overlapping districts here? I think, yeah, Food Access LA and Farm to People are here. And so if they all commit to 1 to 2 calls every other day within their network, that accumulates to just 2 to 3 calls every other day to that district, and that's fine. What we should not be doing is like telling everyone call, 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 call. That was what we did the last couple of weeks because it was really helpful then. But now it's to get it to a slower cadence. And it is a little bit hard, I think, to put together a huge giant spreadsheet for everyone. But I think if our ask is for the vendor networks to commit to those 1 to 3 calls every other day. Um,
So, for instance, Hester and I are both in Senator Laird's district, and that's one of the targeted people.
Laird is not really a targeted one because he's never going to be our champion and he's already a big ally. Um, We'll have a video recording later, Hester. I will say, like, for Laird's district, who's already a big ally, 1 call like a week uh, per hub, or like it's probably good enough. Um, yeah. So to your question, Hester, like Laird is probably lower priority, but it's still good to call. Um, at a lower cadence and not push an entire everyone to it. I think you just joined after the fact that our goal is just 1 to 3 calls every other day um, per vendor network. Yes, so those other ones more so. Yeah. And one important note is like some of you all are sourcing farms uh, from other counties and other districts. And so having them called there, you can call either, but those farms should call their assembly person in their district. And in our emails, one, you can reach out to us if you want to know, but in our emails, we have a link to how to find either your own assembly person or senator or one of your farms by zip codes. Um, If you're just joining us, I have recorded this. The short story is we're going to be a little bit more organized with our communications to not overwhelm everyone. And two, There's still an ask for phone calls, but it's less of a constant, and more of a commitment by vendors and farms to call once or twice every other day. Um, and okay, anything more on phone? Oh, and then lastly, if you are making phone calls, always when you make phone calls, drop a line to myself and Samiha to let us know that you called and one of your farmers promised to call or something like that. It's really important that that information gets back to us and we can either use a tracker or email. Well,
I may just, Andy, so for the folks on this call, we may figure this out offline, but it might be the simplest if folks just respond to one of the weekly emails I send and let me know how many folks you've called, or how many times.
yeah. Um, Anything more on phone calls? What we might do, like this is our first sort of Tuesday call. Like what we might do on future Tuesdays is just do it as phone banking hours, where we call in and we just all go on mute and make the phone calls. But really not, it's not that many, right? It's one to two every other day. Any more questions on phone calls or identifying the right? I will say also that even though we are seeking certain champions, no matter what district you're in, making those phone calls to is important, and it's gonna be important for this whole process. Um, One other thing that you might uh, hear back, some of the offices might ask you all for follow-up documents. And we can provide those. We have a one pager. We also have a formal budget letter that we're circulating. So if any staff people ask for a follow-up, you can either connect them to us and Jamie, who's listed in the email, or we can provide those materials for you all to forward yourselves. Um, okay, moving on to the yes, we can just send you this. Um, okay, moving on to what's coming, which is more in-person visits, which I believe I have in my notes from Jamie when those will be. Um, but just so you all know what we were able to do 2 weeks ago with the help from some of our hubs. Thank you, Sam from Spade and Plow, who was out there. Was go up to Sacramento and go door to door and do a big education effort. Um, what will be happening next, I don't know if we have another one of those scheduled. Um, but ooh, ideally, sorry, I'm trying to pull up um, April 9th and
I think April 22nd,
April 9th and 22nd. Okay.
for
Um,
committee meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, so similar to sort of how it works nationally, it works the same here, is that there's committees on various things where questions like this are brought up and introduced and debated and called on for support from the public. And so, of course, our relevant committee is the Agriculture Committee. And so there's an Agriculture Committee in the Senate, and then there's an Agriculture Committee in um, the Assembly. One's going to be on let's see, April 22nd is when the assembly is going to be covering the CDFA, and April 9th is when the Senate will be. And what that means is on those 2 days, bright and early, we need what I'm told is as many people as possible to go to Sacramento with us and station ourselves in the chamber. And when it's time for public comment, to one after the other, go up to the microphone and champion this for I don't know how long you have, 60 seconds or 2 minutes. It's a long way to go to speak for 2 minutes, but um, it's really important because it shows how important the program is. So we in CAF will do everything we can to organize the day to be as seamless as possible and helpful. But there we are going to have an ask to get as many people as we can, farmers and food hubs. Um, and Jamie might give us to maybe which districts are the most important, but getting people into those rooms um, are we'll put them April 9th and April 22nd. Um, and we'll have more information about the times, etc. But that's going to be pretty much a really big ask. And ideally, we'll have our champion in place because that's going to be relevant to make that happen. But could be, a fun day. Everyone gets to come out and, you know, engage in civic hope. Um, But we'll have more information on about that. And then other things we might ask are farm tours for our legislators. If there's any interest in that, we might follow up. That's especially certainly if we get a champion, we'll probably try to get them to a farm or a food hub or a food bank, and then potentially others as well. That's more in CAF's area of expertise, and we'll have a sense of like when we need to like push which buttons. Um, and we might also do a press, what do you call it? Press event at some point as well. And then I will say lastly, this is the sketch we're laying out for folks, trying to be a little bit more standardized on phone calls, on meetings, etc. But there's also moments when things might come up really quickly. And so we apologize for the maybe intense emergency feel you might receive from us. But some things happen really quickly. Sometimes assembly people and senators need something right then, or the connection just needs to be activated in a really short amount of time. Whether that looks like interview request, a phone call, or an in-person meeting. These requests might exist in this space, and we don't know when they might happen. So just being available for those calls of requests for support when they might show up, and we can't really always predict them. But more likely it will be when targeted to our champions or prospective champions. Um, any questions on that? No? Am I missing anything, Samiha?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, we'll continue to hold this space. We, as Andy mentioned, we don't exactly know the format, if it'll be like weekly announcements like this or food banking space. But yeah, we will continue to hold weekly updates.
What else? Let's see. We can also talk briefly Farm Bill. Some of you might seen that there was some LFPA Farm Bill movement last week. I'm still awaiting like what the implications are of that, but essentially the Republican Congress released their Farm Bill, um, next Farm Bill, and LFPA was included. And so this was included in a Farm Bill budget proposed by Republicans, fully funding the program through 2031. That's we're that does not change our calculus in our California ask at all. We cannot trust the federal government, and we should not be. So, so that doesn't change anything I've said up until now. We're going to proceed with that strategy as strongly as we can. But what that does say is there is hope of um, federal funding, which is the preferred funding mechanism for this project. Um, Aside from LFPA being in the Farm Bill, the rest of the Farm Bill was quite ugly. Um, and Democrats are, vowing to not co-sponsor it or co-sign it. So we'll probably get an update later this week, I think. about what the sort of status is there, but just wanting to also some imbue some optimism that that this is still a point of discussion and a point of interest and a potential point of commitment from the federal government, which truthfully is the better funding mechanism than California budget. So that's hopeful, um, but not promised. So we're not banking on it. Um, okay, by show of hands or thumbs up, do people feel like they can commit to 1 to 2 phone calls every other day, as well as activating maybe a farm or two that you work with closely to make those phone calls? And some thumbs ups. Great. Um, for Food Access LA, one note for you all is checking in, and some of your farms are in other districts that are potentially more important than Los Angeles County. So that's the other thing to think about is if you're sourcing from farms out of district, activating those farms to call their assembly people, even if it's not your own, is really helpful. 10-4, cool. I think that means thumbs up. Okay, great. Well, then I'm going to upload the recording of this and send a recap email for this week's actions. And you'll next hear from us on after that Friday, and then we'll be back here again next Tuesday for phone banking or any questions or office hours. Oh yeah, and thank you all so much for your work. It's a lot, we know. We appreciate you and are hopeful that with all of us together, with farms together, we can we can get it permanently funded one way or another. Cool. Thank you, everybody.